Hi, I'm Simon, creator of Legend of the Bones. Welcome, and thanks for giving this podcast a go. Following in the footsteps of giants, Legend of the Bones is a chimera, a mix of old-school tabletop RPG and dark fantasy storytelling. The storytelling will unfold as I interpret the roll of the dice. Nothing will be preordained. In Legend of the Bones, the dice rule. There'll be no rerolls, no fudging the dice, no metacurrency. The roll of the bones will determine the character's destiny, and no one will be spared their fate. As this is session 0, I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining why I created Legend of the Bones, and what you can expect. If you prefer to get straight into the story, then just skip ahead a few minutes. In Legend of the Bones, there aren't any players. This is an experiment in solo gaming, brought to life through the story. A desire to explore solo gaming is what led me to create Legend of the Bones. Whilst I play RPGs with friends, there's something about slow gaming and world building through solo play which is really appealing. Having said that, this is new to me. I've never played solo before, and I felt that by recording my solo play as a podcast, it would help me bring the experience to life and give it a tangible structure that would not exist if I simply played in my head. I came back to gaming in 2018 after a 25-year hiatus, so my reference point for tabletop role-playing games is firmly in the 1980s. With that in mind, Legend of the Bones follows the old-school tradition. I want to capture those feelings of wonder I had as a kid, playing RPGs for the first time. My mind blown by the concept of a game where the only limiting factor was your imagination. I want to create an experience where you, the listener, and I, the creator, can suspend our disbelief and enjoy the ride. The fantasy will be as I prefer it, grim, gritty, and grounded, and in that vein, I hope it will be immersive. Episodes of Legend of the Bones will be fairly short, around 30 minutes long. I'll try hard to maintain the immersion through a strong narrative, built around an absolute devotion to whatever the dice dictate. In some regards, you could consider this to be a procedurally driven audio drama. The story will unfold in response to the dice, so I will be along for the ride as much as you, the listener. At this stage, I should point out that Legend of the Bones is intended for a mature audience. That means there will be frequent, detailed descriptions of violence, and whilst it will not be explicit, other adult themes may be inferred. Listener discretion is therefore advised. So let's get to the mechanics. I want a game system that is light and simple, so as to maintain an equilibrium between game and narrative. As such, I'll be using the 1981 D&D Basic Expert Rules, as restated by the excellent Old School Essentials, as the basis for Legend of the Bones, but I will be using a few house rules which I'll explain as they come up. Okay, let's get to it. Now we need some characters. I'm going to start with 4, one for each of the human-only classes. At this stage, I don't want any demi-human characters. Humans are the dominant species in my game world, so that will keep our characters thematic. The rules for character creation are as follows. Attributes will be determined by a straight roll of 3d6. Any roll of 6 or less will be re-rolled. If the prime requisite of the character is under 13, I'll re-roll that too. This is the only time that a re-roll will be allowed. Everything else is as the dice show. I'm also going to start each character with the maximum number of hit points for their class, but they will start with no equipment other than the clothes on their backs. Each character will be defined by the 6 standard attributes: Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. On the matter of hit points, I'm going to rule that monsters and NPCs will min out to half their possible maximum. There has to be a challenge after all. Oh, and one other thing. I'll be using the optional rule of Ascending Armor class. No other reason than I just prefer it. Okay, so let's roll up some characters. First roll. Strength. 12. Intelligence. 10. Wisdom. 17. Wow, that'll be a bonus to some saves. Dexterity. 5. Time to re-roll. A 9. Constitution. 11. Charisma. 12. These are pretty good scores all round, but with that 17 in wisdom, this character has to be a cleric. Next up, strength. 17! Wow! Intelligence. 12. Wisdom. 9. Dexterity. 9. Constitution. 13. Charisma. 11. Another set of good rolls. With bonuses in strength and constitution, this has to be a fighter. Next character. Strength. A 9. Intelligence. 15. Wisdom. 6. Reroll. An 8. There'll be a penalty to some saves there. Dexterity. 11. Constitution. 6. Another reroll. A 9. And charisma. 10. These stats are pretty average, except intelligence, which at 15 will give a bonus to languages. I think this has to be a magic user. Final character. Strength. 12. Intelligence. 12. Wisdom. 9. Dexterity. 13. That will be a bonus to armor class and missile attacks. Constitution. 11. And charisma. 13. This character will get a bonus to reaction rolls. A good set of rolls, and with decent charisma and dexterity, this feels like a thief or rogue. So now we have our 4 characters. Let's get into the story. Beric had been drifting in and out of consciousness for what seemed like eternity. But now, he slowly became aware of his surroundings. The warmth of the sun on his back, the damp sand beneath his face, the mewing of gulls, the sound of waves gently lapping. His limbs ached and his head pounded. With an effort, he lifted himself onto his knees and wiped the sand from his face. Squinting at first, he opened his eyes. The beach was littered with debris and half a dozen bodies. Gulls and crows scavenged among the wreckage. A large section of the ship's broken hull lay like a beached whale. The broken strakes bore witness to the violence the vessel had been subjected to. Unsteadily, Beric got to his feet. Looking around, the scale of the devastation struck him. A nearby crow pecked at the vacant eyes of a dead man until it extracted the morsel and flew away.
"Gods have mercy,"
he whispered hoarsely. His throat was parched. He needed to find water. Beric began to search for anything that might prove useful. The nearest body was that of the man whose eye had been taken by the crow. The man had a dagger on his belt, as well as a coin purse. Beric took the whole belt and tightened it around his waist. At least now he had a weapon of sorts. The second body, that of another man, yielded nothing, but nearby, lying on the sand, was a water skin. Beric snatched it up. It was perhaps only half full, but it was water nonetheless. He took a mouthful. Never had water tasted so good. He replaced the stopper and slung the skin over his shoulder. A few feet away, a woman lay face down in the sand beside a broken barrel. Beric knelt by the body and began rifling through her clothes. He felt awkward at the violation, but thankfully the woman's auburn hair hid her face. Trying to search the body face down was not easy, so he rolled the woman over onto her back. Just then, a groan escaped from her lips. She was alive. Dramatis Personae. Beric. Beric is a human male fighter, level 1. He is 22 years old, with cropped brown hair and a short beard. His eyes are blue. He has a long scar running down his left eyebrow and down his cheek. He stands at 6'2" and weighs 185 pounds, which, combined with the scar, makes him an imposing figure. Truth be told, he has a gentle nature, despite the tragedy of his past. Beric grew up in the small village of Arnfeld. Beric's parents died of plague when he was young. He had no siblings, and was raised by his kindly aunt and uncle. When he was old enough, Beric worked on his uncle's farm as a labourer and shepherd. One night, whilst Beric tended the sheep, a goblin warband attacked. Beric fought bravely, but was struck down by a wolf rider. The goblin's blade slashed across the young man's face, knocking him unconscious, and left for dead. The goblins slaughtered everyone and everything that night. They looted what they could before burning the farmstead to the ground. The next morning, folk from neighbouring farms found Beric and brought him to safety. As the days and weeks passed, his wound healed, but the scar would forever be a reminder of the life and loved ones he had lost. A deep and bitter hatred of goblin kind grew in him, along with a restlessness. Beric knew there was nothing left for him in Arnfeld, and now he longed to see something of the world. With just a few meagre belongings, Beric left Arnfeld and headed west, until he arrived at the coastal city of Godsport. The city overwhelmed the young shepherd. He had never seen so many people in one place, nor buildings so grand. The sights and sounds assaulted his senses, and soon he longed for open skies and cleaner air. One day, whilst walking down by the docks, Beric's attention was caught by a man recruiting ship hands. He knew this was his opportunity to see the world, and so he signed up. Beric's maiden voyage aboard the Siren was headed to the distant city of Alcazar. The ship, whose captain was a gruff man by the name of Curtis, carried a cargo of brandy and wool, as well as paying passengers. The Siren set sail on a glorious spring day. The sun shone in a cloudless sky, and the sea rippled with a gentle breeze. Beric listened, learned fast, and worked hard, and despite his abrupt demeanour, Curtis seemed to appreciate the young man's efforts. On the third day, the weather turned. It started slowly, the wind picking up and billowing out the canvas sails. Rain quickly followed, a few spots at first, but soon it became heavy. Before long, the Siren was in the midst of a full-blown storm. The passengers took shelter below deck as the crew struggled to secure the flapping sails as the waves grew in size. The ship lurched as the swell lifted and dropped the vessel with enormous force. Beric stumbled and reached out to grip the rail to steady himself. Suddenly, a scream came from above him as the barrelman was thrown from the crow's nest. The man's arms flailed wildly as he fell, before his body hit the deck with a sickening crunch. Though futile, Beric instinctively moved to give the man aid, and as he did so, a dark shadow loomed overhead. He looked up. An immense wave towered above him. The ship lurched again. There was a sharp crack, and the mast snapped like a twig, and Beric was thrown off his feet as the wave came crashing down on the vessel. And then, there was only darkness. "Easy now," Beric said gently, as he cradled the woman's head and brought the water skin to her lips. The woman took a sip of water and coughed. "Can you sit?" The woman pushed herself into a sitting position. She blinked hard, surveying the scene as she did so, but saying nothing for several minutes. Eventually, she broke the silence with little more than a hoarse whisper.
Poor souls.
She turned to Beric and stared at his face as if trying to recognise him. A thin and somewhat forced smile broke on her lips before she spoke again.
I thank you, sir.
I'm just glad you're alive. My name is Beric. May I ask your name, lady?
Lena. You may call me Lena.
Well, Lena, I do not hold much hope, but we should check if there are other survivors. Do you think you could stand?
Beric extended a hand to Lena, who took it and allowed herself to be helped up. The pair checked the other bodies that were scattered across the beach. Beric was right not to hope, for there were no other survivors. Among the dead was Captain Curtis, his eyes staring lifelessly. Beric closed them and paused for a moment in respect. The search of the dead yielded a coin purse with 14 silver shillings and 2 daggers.
Perhaps we might salvage something of use from the remnants of the hull,
Lena suggested.
Agreed,
Beric replied, and they went to investigate the large section of the Siren's bow. As they rounded the hull, they could see the figurehead had been torn from the bow peak, leaving nothing but a pair of elaborately carved fins. 2 more bodies lay on this side of the wreck, neither yielding anything of use, but had already been made a meal for the gulls. Turning their attention to the ship, Beric found some rigging, from which he was able to salvage 9 yards of rope. This he coiled and slung across his chest before Lena called him over to where she was standing inside the broken hull. As Beric approached, Lena directed him with a glance towards an iron cage that was bolted to the hull. The bars had been twisted and bent out of shape by the forces to which the ship had been subjected to. That in itself was unremarkable, but huddled in the corner, in soiled, ragged clothes, was a man. The man in the cage is Keir, a human rogue. Neither Beric nor Lena know him, but Beric does know that a stowaway was found on the Siren, and Captain Curtis had thrown them in the brig. Therefore, I'm going to rule that Beric will correctly assume that Keir is the stowaway. Keir has a charisma of 13, which gives him a +1 to reaction rolls, but I am going to use a standard ability check for this kind of interaction. So let's see what Beric and Lena think of him. Here is the roll on a d20. A 10. That's a success. The man lifted his head. Under the grime and filth, it was clear that he was young, perhaps 17 or 18 years old. He looked pleadingly.
Please,
he implored.
Please help me. Who are you?
Lena asked.
And why are you in this cage?
He was a stowaway,
Beric answered before the man could say anything. The man got to his feet and approached the bars.
It's true,
the man confessed.
I was a stowaway. I had need to make haste, leaving Gosport. I had no coin for the passage, so I slipped aboard. It was a small evil to avoid a greater one. Please, for the love of the gods, please help me.
Beric looked at Lena.
Whatever he has done, he doesn't deserve to die like this. Agreed?
Agreed.
Well then, we will need something to bend these bars. Here, help me with this.
Beric grunted as he lifted a 4-foot section of broken strake before wedging it between the 2 bars which were most bent. This is going to be a challenge. Beric is attempting to bend the cage bars using a timber from the ship as a lever. Whilst the bars have already been weakened, this will be difficult. I am going to make an ability check against Beric's strength of 17. However, given the difficulty of the task, I am going to apply a -4 penalty. Having said that, Lena will be assisting, so I will add a +1 modifier, making the net penalty -3, meaning that Beric will need a 14 or less. Here is the roll.
Nat 20!
Oh, that is bad luck. A critical fumble. Let's see what happens. Beric and Elena took the strain, pulling the strake with every ounce of strength they possessed. Sweat broke out on Beric's skin. The muscles in his arms and shoulders burned with the exertion. The bars creaked.
That's it!
He grunted through gritted teeth. The bars creaked again. Suddenly, there was a loud crack as the strake snapped. The sudden release sent Beric and Lena tumbling back to land in a heap. They picked themselves up, fortunate not to have hurt anything but their pride.
We need to use our brains as much as our brawn. Look,
Lena pointed to the hinges of the cage door.
I'm no blacksmith, but these are half-pin barrel hinges. If we can lever the gate upwards, then it should lift off and fall free.
You're right, and I am a fool. Here, help me with this.
Beric picked up another piece of hull debris, wedged one end under the door, and placed a rock underneath to create a lever.
Right, let's try this again. Push!
They pushed down on the timber with all their weight. There was a creaking sound as metal rubbed on metal, and the gate inched up.
Just a little more!
With a final push, the gate lifted free of its hinges and fell sideways.
Thank you, friends,
the young man said.
My name is Kier.
I'm Beric, and this is Lena. Here.
Beric handed Kier a water skin, and as the rogue quenched his thirst, Beric surveyed their surroundings. The beach was part of a large cove, enclosed by cliffs some 80 feet high. There was no obvious way to scale the cliff safely, but Beric noticed a cave in the northern cliff.
There's nothing else for us here, and these cliffs look too difficult to climb. I suggest we explore that cave. Perhaps, if we're lucky, it may lead to an easier ascent.
Agreed, but we will need light.
You're right. Perhaps we can make torches from the debris. As a boy, I learned how to make fire without a tinderbox. If we're lucky, I should be able to get a fire going.
I'm going to make 2 ability checks for Beric to see whether he can make a fire. Firstly, an intelligence check to see if he correctly remembers the technique that must be used. Beric has an intelligence of 12. Here's the roll. A 4. Next, I'm going to test his dexterity to see if he can make it happen. Beric's dexterity is 9. Here's the roll. An 8. That was close. I am also going to rule that there is a 25% chance that the party discovers some of the ship's cargo of brandy, which may come in use. Here is the roll on percentile dice. 0.5. Well now, that is some luck. Lena and Kier set to work using the ship's timbers and cloth from the dead to make crude torches, whilst Beric, using his dagger, prepared the materials required to make a fire. Kier found 4 bottles of brandy in a broken crate and suggested that this could be used to soak the rags. Once everything was prepared, they gathered their salvaged equipment, and the 3 of them trudged across the sand towards the cave. Once at the entrance, Beric set to work making a fire. He had prepared a bow drill and fireboard from salvaged wood, and unravelled some of the rope for the string. The rope also yielded some fibres to act as kindling. After a little trial and error, Beric soon had the fireboard smoking, and a few minutes later, he was able to see an ember. Shortly, the new companions were warming themselves on the small fire. They were hungry, so Keir scavenged some seaweed from a nearby rock pool, which he told them was edible. It was meagre fare, and tough, but it was something, and at least for now, they had some water and warmth. Beric gave one of the daggers to Keir, who readily accepted it. The third he offered to Lena, but the young woman refused.
I cannot,
she explained.
How so?
Beric asked, curiously.
I am a novitiate of the Nine. It is not permitted to wield a blade.
Forgive me. I am a simple farmhand. Until now, my world was small, and I know little of the gods. Well then, shall we see where this cave takes us?
Beric stood and tucked the dagger in his belt. Keir passed him one of the torches, which Beric lit in the fire, before kicking sand over the flames.
Let's go.
Thank you for listening to Legend of the Bones. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you like what you've heard, then please consider rating and reviewing the show in your podcatcher of choice. This is a remastered version of episode 0, and reflects the quality of later episodes. Until I get time to remaster the next few, you may notice a dip in quality. I do encourage you to stick with it though, as I do quickly find my feet. I need to thank Brian C. Rideout of Stormhead Productions. Brian helped me with this remastering, doing some post-production editing on my behalf. Thanks Brian, much appreciated. Brian has his own solo actual play podcast, Swords Against Madness, which is absolutely worth checking out. I would like to take the opportunity to give a huge thank you to John from Tale of the Manticore, which has been an enormous influence and inspiration for the creation of Legend of the Bones. If you've not listened to Tale of the Manticore, you really should. It's amazing, and if I can achieve half its quality, then I will be delighted. You can also help by liking or reposting new episode announcements, or by recommending the show online or to a friend. You really can't beat the power of word of mouth. Alternatively, if you'd like to show your appreciation by buying me a metaphorical cup of tea, then I have a Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/Legend of the Bones. Any donations will go towards the show's running costs. I would also love to know what you think of the show, and I do respond to every message I receive. So with that in mind, you can contact me on X at LegendBones, Blue Sky at LegendBones, Mastodon at LegendBones at ttrpg-hangout.social, Instagram at legendofthebones, email at legendofthebones@gmail.com, or go to legendofthebones.blogspot.com for show notes, house rules, character profiles, art, maps and more. Join me next time to find out what awaits our adventurers as the bones decide their fate. None shall escape the destiny of Bone.